evaluation of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of needs everywhere in the village. We've got a lot of needs.
There's an education piece to this, to the residents, right? And that education piece is that you can't continue to do what you've always done, right? Because you're always going to get what you've always got, right? That's the whole story. But they don't see what happens here. They don't see these meetings if they don't chime in, right? They just don't. They don't maybe know the financial dire straits. They don't know how grossly underfunded the fire pension is. They don't know the story behind the bond issue and some of these other things. They just see the bottom line net result of their tax bill, right? Or how much it costs when they go out to eat. And so there's an education piece there. You know, from a source of revenue, you know, we talked about the potential for pot sales, and we can maybe estimate that or forecast that or look at that, but it's not here yet, right? And that may help, right? You talked about places of eating, right? That's a real thing, and it's a pass through, but it goes back to what you said, right? It increases the cost of doing business at Forest Park. Nominal at best, but it does, right? And then there's the other one that we talked about, you know, years ago, which was the gaming thing. It came up at the last budget meeting, and it's going to come up now because I'm bringing it up, which was real dollars. It was a divisive thing in town. I think, quite frankly, from my opinion on that we're past that. I think that was an administrative thing. I think that there's real comps and real-time data of communities that have utilized or brought in gaming and saw the revenue stream it could provide, and really silence the rumors and speculation of the bad that can come of it and what it's going to do to your town. And I think there's a real revenue stream that are not only that this council needs to make sure that we understand, but our residents need to understand. Because if my biggest concern is whether or not I want the leaves picked up in fall or my sidewalks plowed in winter, well, you don't get to have this and this. You have to pick. And so that's kind of where we're at, you know. So, you know, we can take a hard line in the sand that, you know, gaming has been voted and it's done and it's never going to happen and it tore apart the village. But we could also take another approach. It's been 4 years. We've learned some lessons. We've seen the positive and the good that it brings other communities. We know where we stand as a village financially. We know what services and that our community and our residents have grown to love and appreciate. And quite frankly, if we want to continue that level of services, we need to be a little optimistic, and we need to be a little creative, and we need to visit these other streams of revenue. And as we've all said, we talked about the first two, that is certainly a significant one that is hanging out there, that maybe there is no way. Maybe it's gone, it's dead, duck, and there's no way. But if there is a possibility, I think it is something, like I said last year, that is worth investigating. And I think that the residents, if they understood, if they really truly understood what's at stake and how limited we are on potential sources of revenue, then it would be a real, true eye-opener.
Are you talking about video gambling?
Yes.
Yeah, there's two things. No side of that argument can argue about. One, it hasn't had a detrimental effect on other towns. And two, and more importantly, that administration handled that entire matter horribly. And it was largely the hubris of one individual that drove that, that literally drove that wedge. And, you know, I think Ryan's words are worth listening to, because I think if we're open and honest with the people, they'll listen to us. They'll listen.
I agree 100%, and I think when we're sitting here talking about our state revenue potentially being intercepted to fund our pensions, we absolutely cannot afford not to talk about this. It might not happen, it might not be possible. I'm not even saying it's the right thing, but when we're going to maybe lose everything, we owe it to ourselves to at least have the discussion. People are already talking about it. There's business owners and bar owners and people in the village, and, you know,
They've
it's
been
already
talking
being
about
talked
it.
about. So let's be in on the conversation. Let's be part of that conversation instead of pretending it's not happening or that it's never gonna happen or shouldn't happen. And maybe it shouldn't, but I think we owe it to ourselves to talk about it. And without nastiness, without finger pointing, without saying you're trying to tear this town apart, you know, without all these accusations. Let's look at it, let's look at other towns. Do they have increased crime? You know, how bad is it? All these things we were scared of, have they happened? And if they have, well then, maybe we don't do it, but let's look at the options, you know, what's part
Can
of
I
it.
even do it?
I don't know, but I have no idea, and I'm not even saying we should, but I'm saying we need to talk, we have to have that conversation.
I just think, I mean, earlier Ryan was saying, you know, we have to do bold things because all of this little stuff, it adds up to not enough. When we were down in Springfield, we went to the LGDRF hearing. They're lobbying to restore the 10% because those revenues are falling. It's to dismiss talking about the places of eating tax or some of these other things, but to say we absolutely be gambling, that's doing a disservice to the community. They did vote on it, they did say, like, we need to explore new revenues that are less divisive. If you wanna do your research and see what happened in those communities, go right ahead, but I think it's our responsibility to try to be positive and unifying and moving forward. And I think going line by line, trimming what bits of fat we can, and talking about the things that are coming in that we have access to.
Yeah.
Cannabis, places of eating, we don't know what's gonna happen with those for a year or so. Lobbying for the 10%.
Yep.
To throw all that away and say it's not gonna work, but let's dig down deep into gaming, to me doesn't seem like the most.
That's not what I said. What
I
I
didn't
said
hear
is
that.
it's an opportunity for a potential source of revenue, because we only mentioned two, and that's a third one. And as far as the community is concerned, it was nearly a 50-50 vote. It was only from a popular vote standpoint, or counted vote standpoint, I think like what, 100 votes or something. So it's not really, the community of the Village Forest Park 4 or 5 years ago when this happened was strong one way or another. So it was nearly 50-50, so it's,
It's political.
well, regardless, the vote was in, and it was voted.
Sure.
And so I'm saying,
My
it's-
only point is
well, yeah,
just
I
because
just said it's
people
a different time now.
vote on their phones,
It-
or I mean, gamble on their phones now. I mean, it
Exactly.
has changed, that revenue source for
Yes.
the village is down. The people who have it, the establishments who have it, still make quite a bit of money, so I understand why they're pushing for it. But for the village, this isn't like some sort of, you know, Hail Mary saving, it's gonna bring in millions and millions of dollars, it's just not true. So let's talk about.
It's not, and it shouldn't be positioned that way. It should be positioned as a point of discussion in terms of these other things, like places of eating, like marijuana sales, like home rule, right? It should be added into that pot as a significant source of revenue that should not be overlooked because of a nearly 50-50 vote that was fueled primarily with political rage and distrust for the folks that were involved in it.
Well, but it was about mid-stance, I mean, that's why
It is.
5 of us are here.
Let me ask you, and you don't have to answer right now.
Give us anything in local government district, which is
Sure.
big money.
Yeah.
How about this? I think the argument is there. And sorry to bring this up again, and forgive me, but speaking of legislation, that's gonna require legislation change. When we talk about video gaming, I believe what the mayor indicated, there is no turn-on mechanism that a referendum, on one hand, defeated it, on the other hand, there's no way to turn it back on. That will require legislation. So my question is that something the council would be curious about, I think is the word, open to, where do we have that discussion with the IML, where we're not asking for video gaming. What I'm suggesting is, if there's gonna be video gaming from a community that voted it out, there has to be a due process way to put it back in via referendum. Is that something maybe we should present to the IML too? I'm trying to be neutral on the topic here, I know the sensitivity to the community, but There is no turn-on mechanism from what I understand, so we can talk about video gaming all day, we can't have it back, period.